Although we are active Church of Satan members, we do not speak their behalf. The following contains language in an adult manner and poorly impersonated celebrity voices. Listener discretion is advised.
Just like every other pseudo-satanic organization, they'll soon die out and be flung into the dung heap where they belong. What the fuck is wrong with people?
Welcome to a very special show of the Devil You Know. John, it is 2016. You know what happens this year?
Yes. No, actually I don't. Why don't you tell me?
It's the 50th anniversary.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
It's the 50th anniversary of the Church of Satan.
That's right.
And to kick off the new year, we got to have a very special show, John.
We sure do.
Who
Episode 13. Episode 13. We have the High Priest of the Church of Satan, Magus Gilmore.
Yeah.
Woo! How you doing, sir?
Applause.
Well, thanks for having me, gentlemen.
Thank you for coming on.
Hey, it's always a fun time talking to you guys.
We really appreciate having you on here, and you know, it's just the show's been exciting, just all the different guests, and so it was just a matter of time. We had to get you in here, and so glad that that you can be here with us today, and of course talking about 50 years of the Church of Satan, and we want this to be a special show for you, of course. So we're gonna kind of make it different than usual. We're not gonna do the normal skits and stuff. We want to just kind of focus on what makes our Magus happy.
Yes.
Well, that's a fun idea. So, and you said it's the 13th episode.
Yes.
It's spooky.
Now, of course, yeah, that's always spooky, but I don't think it's spooky for us.
No.
You know, the Christians think 13 is a bad thing because Judas was the 13th member of the Last Supper. So for getting rid of Christ in that mythology, that was not a good thing. It's like they should have had one less at the table for the reservations.
Reservation for 12, please.
Judas, you're not expected. You know, you sit at the kids' table.
I heard that they actually had a reservation for 24. That way they could all sit on one side of the table.
Yes, well, that was for the artists who were painting the portrait of it. They didn't have cameras, of course. No selfies. You had to have sketches done. Well, you know, the satanic thing, too, about it, sometimes people talk about the Knights Templar. King Philip killed the head of the Knights Templar and burnt the rest of them on Friday, October 13th, 1307. So you get several 13s in there that make that for a not such a happy day for some folk.
Right. 13's always been a pretty special number. I mean, there used to be 13 months in a calendar year. There are 13 moons, 13 members of the coven, and all these types of things.
And women usually have 13 menstrual cycles in a year.
That's right.
Oh shit.
And if that of course shows
that is bad luck
of the moon. So that was always considered something of a mysterious and dark nature.
I've never understood how women can bleed for a week and not die.
Yeah, who came up with that joke originally?
I don't remember. I just use them. I don't know who does.
I think I heard it on South Park.
Oh, see, I've heard it before that.
Never trust anything that bleeds for a week and doesn't die.
Yeah, I can't remember. It's a long time ago.
Wow, all right.
13.
So 13.
Awesome.
But yeah, 50th anniversary. This is pretty amazing. You know, Anton LaVey had said that the first 99 years are always the toughest, and here we are. You know, we finished up year 50, and now we move into year 51, so we're ever closer to that 99th year, and we're reaching that magical date, Walpurgisnacht, 2016. There we go. It's a kind of amazing to think of it.
Well, I know that the last year's, around that same time, we had a pretty amazing start to
year 50.
50th year, yeah. It was a blast in DC.
I can't wait. I had such a good time last year. I really can't wait for this year. A lot of people that couldn't make it last year are doing what they can to make it this year. So hopefully,
we have a bigger capacity this year too.
Oh, good.
So we expanded things so that we can fit more people in, but still keep it manageable. But
Right.
it's going to be classy and cool, and I think everybody's going to have a good time at this.
Excellent. Is there any details that we can talk about?
Well, it's going to be in the haunted Hudson Valley because, of course, the new Black House is up here. And since this is now the foundation for where we're going for a while, we think that it needs to be close by. This is the place of power now, so it should be here. It's hell on the Hudson, and we're many of our members have moved in the area, so it's kind of interesting how we are turning this into a devilish town up here. So might as well bring in the rest of the gang and have really good.
Yeah, Marlene and I put a bid on a house up there so we can go there twice a month. I mean, twice a week. I mean, a year. I messed it all up. Darn it. Every once in a while. Yeah, it's crazy. So
Very nice. Yeah.
Yeah, that should be good. Anything special planned around that time, like that we can let out of the bag right now, or is it all? You want to keep it all in the bag?
We're going to keep it quiet for now.
Okay.
Because, again, it's for members only.
Right.
And therefore, the privileged information will be given to the privileged few.
Yeah. Although there will be a new art print ready by an amazing artist who is doing a drawing of our Magus Gilmore for that same weekend. So
you can't talk about yourself like that. You need someone else to do that for you.
I'm my biggest fan. What do you want?
I know, but let me do it. There is an amazing drawing coming out, part 2 of the Magus collection by Dorian Gray, right around that time too. So that should be really good.
I think we'll all be looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And we know that we'll be seeing Dorian's wonderful illustrations in the Satanic Warlock too.
Yeah, which also comes out same week. So I assume that there's going to be a lot of people really excited about that happening.
Yeah, and if I may interject here, we're going to see Dorian's wonderful art on John Shaw, who'll be coming out that week as well.
Yeah, sure thing. Now, are you have? Correct me if I'm wrong, but are you doing the foreword on the Satanic Warlock?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to do that. I've already read parts of it, and it's really intriguing. I think people are going to find it very useful information.
Great. Excellent.
We asked Bob about that, Magister Johnson, if he was giving away all of our secrets, and he said no. But after what you've read, is he giving them all away?
He's kind of taken folks by the hand to say, here's some ammunition you can use in your conquests. And I think there's a lot of folks who may need that assistance. So he's not going to say who the information came from, but yeah, there'll be enough in there, I think. But there are also some stuff that you guys may not know, too. So you might have some new tricks to use once you read the book.
I think there's always something to learn, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, women are an eternal mystery and shall remain thus. So that's an exploration that will never end.
Right. That's very true.
Awesome. That's great.
So let's talk about some of the things that you hold near and dear to your heart, which, of course, we know there's a lot of things, but, of course, we're talking about today, we're talking about film. I know you are a big film buff, and I understand that you talked about maybe working in some editing or some work yourself. Is that?
Well, yeah, I went to film school. I went to the School of Visual Arts for a year, and I originally intended to be a filmmaker, and that was going to be my profession. But music sort of became the passion that overtook my life, and I completed my education in that direction with my bachelor's and master's in music composition at NYU. But film has always been a passion of mine. It's something. It's the literature of the time. It's the major expression that I think our culture has today. It's unique to what's going on in the world, and it encompasses the broadest range of possibility for exploration of ideas and emotions and just about anything you could possibly bring to light about being a human being. So it is, I think, our most important art form. And I'm working on a book about film right now.
Ooh.
Part of my exploration is going to be demonstrating how Satanism is applied in different films that are not obviously satanic to most people. We're not going to see devils and Baphomets and people running around in black. You might have seen that in a couple of the things I talk about. But for the most part, I'm going to talk about where you see our philosophy being applied. And that, I think, will surprise some folks. There'll be a chapter, of course, on the obvious devil movies. And there's actually some things that use Satan and Satanism in them that are pretty good. And maybe we'll wander into that field for now and keep some of the surprises for a later conversation.
Right. Okay.
And begin.
Okay. Well, you know...
do you have any particular ones that really stand out to you in that area?
Well, the one movie that seems to always be brought up when we deal with the Church of Satan is Rosemary's Baby.
Of course.
That was an amazing novel before it was a film, but it was made into a film almost immediately. The film rights were purchased, I think, even before the book was released to the public, and because it made the rounds, I think. And with that film, let's say with the novel, Ira Levin clearly was aware of the publicity of the Church of Satan at the time. He had seen things in the news, in the newspapers, because we got huge coverage back then. Doctor really made a splash with the baptisms and weddings and just getting out into the men's magazines. It was really kind of a new thing, and people were leaping on it because it was so different. So the very idea of just saying, "Hail Satan," in a ritual, no one had ever done that before. And there it was. When you read the book, there are people saying "Hail Satan" and calling 1966 the year one. We all know where that came from.
Yeah.
So it was kind of remarkable that that influence sunk into Levin the novelist, and he used that as a great way of being like a convincer for the book when it came out, because people would go, "Well, I'm reading this book about the Satanists who live next door, this sort of interesting couple." And wait a minute, there's a Church of Satan out there with that bald guy and naked chicks, and maybe I have people like that near me. You know, that was really the whole point of the book, that it kind of sort of put people who are a little eccentric at risk.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it worked well for that. And the interesting thing is that going through correspondence that Anton LaVey had over the past, we've discovered that the publishers of the novel actually approached him to help publicize the novel. This was before the film even came out. That there was a direct approach to Anton LaVey to help see if he was interested. And then when the film came out, the folks who were trying to get publicity for the film, they approached him first as well, including the idea that he would do a publicity stunt for them at a screening in San Francisco, where he showed up in a limousine with a bunch of warlocks clad in black hooded robes. And they had made for that buttons that said "Pray for Anton LaVey," because most of the publicity campaign for the film around the rest of the country was "Pray for Rosemary's Baby." But they figured, well, we've got this head of the Church of Satan who obviously influenced the book. Why don't we do that? Now, the other interesting thing is in the correspondence from the publicity folks, they were the ones who put out a press release suggesting that Anton LaVey might have played the devil in that film.
Yeah.
And Anton LaVey didn't come up with that idea himself. He's not the one who put that out there. They kind of asked him to sort of...
It's even obvious when you look at it, the film that it's not him, but...
Yeah,
but I remember hearing the same thing.
Yeah, I think, it's John Cassavetes is in the makeup at one point, and, because she's overlaying things. It's the sort of surreal dream image she's having. But, the scaly-bodied devil, they wanted you, the film people doing publicity wanted you to think it might be Anton LaVey. And so they kind of said, so Anton LaVey, could you sort of just hint at that? We'll say it and go along with it. Don't debunk it. But it was them, not Anton LaVey. I think a number of people later try to act like Anton LaVey was somehow jumping on the bandwagon and was faking it to get some kind of publicity for himself. But we have correspondence that proves absolutely and utterly that idea was not from him. It actually came from the people publicizing the film.
Wow,
that's crazy.
Good to know.
And I don't think this will be the first time that I think that's been revealed to the public.
Yeah, I've never heard anything like that. That's really interesting. And I guess it makes sense, for if Anton being such kind of a mysterious man to the public at the time, that might even just make, I guess, people more curious to go and see it, huh?
Oh, hell yeah. He was again in the news all throughout that time period. The novel came out in, I think, March of 1967, and the film came out in 1968, and the Church of Satan had huge publicity in those years. So, the wedding that they had done, and it was just all over the place in major newspapers and minor newspapers and magazines. So the Rosemary's Baby folks figured, well, clearly there was an influence on the original book, so let's capitalize on the real world source for this. Yeah, and the rest is history. And it's a great movie. That was the other thing. The novel is a solid novel. Yeah, and Polanski did an awesome adaptation of it. It's probably one of the most accurate adaptations of a novel I've ever seen.
Do you feel like, obviously we know that, of course, there's the fiction of it, which is what's fun about it, that she has the devil's baby and everything and this cult and stuff. But what aspects of it, I actually did a show with Adam Campbell about that movie. But are there certain aspects to you that stand out as this actually is a good representation of Satanism in certain parts of the film itself?
Well, what is accurate about Satanism is the idea that the people who were involved in Satanism in the film are like the actual members of the Church of Satan. There are a wide variety of people it could be the accomplished elderly couple next door who had really interesting lives, to one guy is a shipping magnate, a Greek shipping magnate. There's like average folks, there are highly accomplished folks, there's wealthy folks, there's poorer folks. It's just the entire spectrum of kinds of people that were interested in supporting this Satanism that was formed for the movie. And that's very accurate about the Church of Satan, because our people come from all different parts of the socioeconomic spectrum. And it doesn't mean that you have to be wealthy and accomplished to decide to be a Satanist. You just have to be born that way. You just have to see yourself reflected in the literature. And essentially that film made that reality clear. And I think that's the most satanic thing about the film.
Right.
Another thing, Rosemary's Baby, written and directed by Roman Polanski, as some of us might know, he was married to Sharon Tate, who we all know who that is. Yeah. And she was in a movie called Eye of the Devil, which was actually, initially titled 13. So back to the 13. Exactly. And before she died, her last film was actually called 12 plus 1. And if anybody knows any math out there, 12 plus 1 is 13.
What?
Yes. So there's that.
Eye of the Devil is a pretty amazing film. It's from 1966, and it's shot in black and white, and it really is the precursor to The Wicker Man. The concept is that an aristocrat is living in London with his wife, as Deborah Carr plays her, and he's got children, and he's summoned back to the ancestral vineyards in the south of France, and everybody's wondering why. And when he goes there, he's got an awesome chateau, but you find out that the crops are failing. The grapes aren't doing what they're supposed to do. Now, there seems to be a guy who heads the church, but he's anything but Christian. And what you find out is that this agricultural area is very much pagan, and that the whole point is the fellow who is the major figure in the bloodline is tied to the land. And he may have to sacrifice himself for the good of the crops. If you remember in the Wicker Man film, at the end, Sergeant Howie says that to Christopher Lee. He said, "You're sacrificing me now, but if the crops fail again, no less a sacrifice than you will be due." And so there it was. The Wicker Man's from 1973. So here in 66, we were getting this totally diabolical movie about pagan survival. And a really beautiful dramatization of it. And with Sharon Tate and David Hemmings kind of played Diana and Lucifer as human beings. And of course, she's stunningly beautiful, and David Hemmings at that point is young and handsome, so they're a wonderful carnal couple, and they're very mysterious figures, avatars around the chateau, and they add to the mystery and the pagan trappings. So it's a totally worthwhile film to catch. It's not easily found these days. Turner Classic Movies tends to show every once in a while, so do keep your eye out for it, because it's definitely a really nifty thing that you'll enjoy.
Excellent.
Awesome. I haven't seen that myself, so I'm looking forward to seeing it now.
I do recall The Wicker Man.
Yeah, I saw the one with what's his name, Nicolas Cage. Yeah, I know.
It's not the same.
No, not at all. Nothing he does is the same. So, wait a minute, let me rephrase that. Everything he does is the same. No, it's
No, that's an abomination, that remake.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, Christopher Lee gives a standout performance in the original, and that's an extraordinary film. It's a real horror film because it shows how religion is dangerous. It doesn't matter whether it's Christianity or paganism. We've got two religions fighting each other, and you end up somebody's getting killed for religious reasons who really doesn't deserve it. And that's kind of horrific. Yeah. So it's funny that I think pagans often look at that and think, well, it's his just desserts. And it's like, no, not really. Sergeant Howie doesn't deserve to be sacrificed. He's done nothing to merit that. He's just doing his job. He may be an uptight Christian. And if he had slept with Britt Eklund, then they wouldn't have sacrificed him.
I was going to say, at least let him get laid once.
Yeah, well, that was the thing, though. That was the test. Yeah, if he had done that, if he had been carnal, then they wouldn't have done it, because he had to be a virgin. Yeah. And they gave him every chance, but he, like Christ, he blew it.
And back then there were things, called virgins. We don't have those anymore, but yeah. That's awesome.
That's probably why all the pagan religions are kind of dying out. There's no virgins to sacrifice anymore.
Yeah.
Well,
awesome.
The pagans are doing, I think, they've become kind of weirdly spread out. It was very interesting when you look at how neo-paganism began, and it's really gotten so many different branches and types and interpretations that what it means to be a pagan is up for grabs these days.
Exactly, yeah. Aside from that, now I know you, before, of course, we started recording, you had mentioned The Mask of the Red Death.
Yeah. Now
which is a Poe story, right? Edgar Allan Poe?
Yeah, they based it on a Poe story, and the story itself is wonderful, but they elaborated on it. They brought in another Poe story to add interest and size to it, because his stories are rather tight. But Roger Corman directed it, and it's one of his most beautiful films. The sets, I think, had been used for the wonderful movie Beckett, and so they had these awesome sets that they could use on hand, because Corman always was a low-budget producer and director. So it was great for them to have these amazing things to use to really dress up and play around and to create the atmosphere for the film. And, of course, Vincent Price is at his diabolical best in there as Prince Prospero, who is an avowed Satanist in the film, which is not part of the Poe story.
Right, exactly.
Something, I think Richard Matheson added that. And the interesting thing, too, about it is that this is from 1964. So this is before the Church of Satan happened. And here we have a character proclaiming his Satanism. And that was remarkable for the time period. That they wanted to make him frightening and terrifying because he's an aristocrat, and the Red Death is spreading throughout the countryside, and he wants to gather his favorite people in his chateau and lock all the gates and let everybody else die outside while they celebrate. Of course, he thinks that the Red Death can be kept out of there, and he thinks that his devotion to Satan might actually help him in that respect. But what's intriguing about it is that when he talks about Satanism, he says some really remarkable things. And I'll quote some of them for you so that it might titillate some folks to watch the movie. So when talking to Francesca, the pagan girl who's a Christian, now just a little backup. Prospero's, of course, a lech. He's got a gorgeous wife played by Hazel Court. She's absolutely stunning in this film, and she's completely devoted to being a disciple of the devil. But, of course, Vincent finds this wonderful redheaded Christian girl that he would like to deflower and ruin her faith. So when he brings her into the castle, he sees her cross, and she says that she believes she's a Christian, and he says, "Believe? If you believe, you are gullible. Can you look around this world and believe in the goodness of a God who rules it? Famine, pestilence, war, disease, and death, they rule this world." So she responds, "There is also love and life and hope." And he says, "Very little hope, I assure you. No, if a God of love and life ever did exist, he is long since dead. Someone, something rules in his place."
Awesome.
Nice.
God is dead. That's awesome. Satan lives.
Now he takes her up to the battlements and tries to teach her about using a falcon. And he says, "Do you know how a falcon is trained, my dear? Her eyes are sewn shut, blinded temporarily. She suffers the whims of her God patiently until her will is submerged and she learns to serve, as your God taught and blinded you with crosses."
Very
But
cool.
Can you just keep reading us stuff? That's so awesome.
Well, ultimately, at the end, the Red Death does show up, and the Red Death looks like him, of course, because that's how it works when you're meeting your own specter. So Prospero, who really does believe in Satan, says, "But Satan rules the universe. I made a pact with him." And the Red Death says, "He does not rule alone, and your pact with him will not save you." So Prospero says, "There is no other God. Satan killed him." And the man in red says, "Each man creates his own God for himself, his own heaven, his own hell." And so Death himself is the real Satanist.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
that's
so
that's such
awesome.
a great quote.
So that's pretty remarkable in a film from prior to the Church of Satan, and I'm sure Anton LaVey saw that and was like,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I
This was
heard,
only 2 years before it, right? So
Yeah.
I heard that all the victims in that film, they're overcome by sharp pains and sudden dizziness and hematidrosis, and they die within 13 minutes.
dum 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 dum.
I read that somewhere.
But we go on with Vincent Price because he's, again, always this awesome satanic figure that just as a person, that he's elegant and well-spoken and cultured, and he played so many unbelievably evil characters. So he's always playing from the dark side and can be this fantastic exemplar for any satanic warlock. When you look at a film like The Abominable Dr. Phibes, that's a whole film about artistic vengeance. So aesthetics plays a huge role as well, which, as we all know, is a major part of Satanism.
Right.
And his wife had died at the hands of surgeons who couldn't really preserve her life. So he gets revenge on everybody and does it in all kinds of wonderfully artistic ways that are just elaborate and decadent and splendid. And of course he has artificial human companions too that are a band, Clockwork Wizards, that play in his wonderfully Art Deco lair. And he has a gorgeous woman, Vulnavia, who serves him, and she is a wonderful aid to all of his nefariousness. So I think, and they're actually doing a remake now with Malcolm McDowell, which should be interesting. Because we all know Malcolm McDowell. I mean, we've seen him in Caligula and other things.
That was a great film. Yeah, I like that one.
That's a wild movie. I saw one of the premiere screenings of it in Manhattan. They had this awesome theater where they had put all these obscene Greek friezes on the wall that were done in white. And what they did, Greek and Roman, they mixed it up. It wasn't any specific style.
Right.
But when the film came on, these red draperies covered them all so that they wouldn't distract you from the wonderful cavorting and obscenity on the screen.
It's crazy.
That's awesome.
So now back to Dr. Phibes. That was all his murders were planned after the plagues, right? Of the
yeah, he used the
Testament
biblical
plagues.
Symbolism of the plagues that supposedly had been cast against Pharaoh by Moses.
Oh, in Egypt,
Right.
yeah.
I remember I was a kid when I saw the movie the first time. I think I was in probably third grade, and for whatever reason, the scene with, of course, looking at it nowadays, it's not that shocking, but the locusts eating away at the skull. That image, I saw it as a child, and that image today is still in my head. Like, it was shocking to me, I guess, as a kid, that enough that it still is there. I can still bring it to mind instantly.
Oh yeah, well that was just that whole method of killing them with the locusts. You had to drill the hole over the bed, and you had to make this kind of vegetable concentration that the locusts would want to eat, and it had to be body temperature, so that if it covered the guy, he wouldn't wake up. It would just be not noticed. Yeah, so that was the point. And what elaborate plans. And then of course you let the locusts loose and the fun begins.
Yes. Yeah, that was awesome. A powerful image to me, but yeah, it was I remember enjoying that film even back then. So, yeah.
Well, on the subject of vengeance, of course, there's another devil-themed movie that definitely goes along with that. It's called Evil Speak. And it stars, of all people, Clint Howard.
Wow.
It's from 1981, and it's a really fun film. He's this little goofy guy who's put in a military academy. And, of course, everybody just busts on him constantly because he's just a fuck-up. So they mock him, they torture him, essentially, and they even kill his puppy. So that's pretty rotten, I'd say.
John Wick wouldn't stand for that, but...
Nope. Well, what happens is that our little fellow roots around in the basement of the chapel and discovers that there's a hidden chapel, and that actually that area had been founded by a famous Satanist who had been excommunicated and sent from Spain to the New World. So he left with his followers, chased out by the Spanish Inquisition, and began his own satanic church here in the United States. And of course, it's the fellow who played him kind of looks like, he looks sort of like Anton LaVey. He's got the shaved head and the goatee.
That's peculiar.
was he the guy from Night Court?
Night Court, yep. That's
yeah.
Bull. That's it. Yeah.
Yep. Well, he looks really diabolical. He's very tall, of course, you remember, and wearing his hooded robe and carrying this huge ornate sword.
Father Esteban.
Yes, exactly. You've got it. You've seen it.
I love that movie. Yeah, I mean, if it came from 81, I've seen it. That Clint Howard's Ron Howard's little brother, right?
Absolutely, yeah. He's always getting stuck in things that Ron Howard does. But, the whole thing is about him. He uses his computer to figure out how to do a sort of black mass and resurrect the spirit of the dead Father Esteban to help him get vengeance against all the people who are torturing him. And, of course, he does, in a rather spectacular flaming finale that includes savage, feral boars eating people and, heads being chopped off with swords and him levitating in a flaming church. It's awesome. It's just
sweet.
Really fun movie. It's really over the top. But, again, the satanic theme of getting vengeance where it's due. That was the satanic part in it.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, you kill my puppy, gonna have hell to pay.
Now you're gonna get it, Bobby. Yeah, definitely. Love it.
Even when we talk about vengeance, I don't know if you guys have seen the Charles Bronson movie Death Wish.
Oh yeah, I watched that with my dad when I was young.
Yeah, from 1974, and that movie too really shocked people when it came out, because the very idea that this sort of nebbishy guy would totally pick up a gun and go out and start to take out the bad guys. It is so nowadays it wouldn't fly at all with the political correctness that we have. Standing up for yourself and taking vengeance, not returning it threefold, is really kind of remarkable. And
although they did actually, they remade "I Spit on Your Grave," which talk about a vengeance film.
That was great.
Oh yeah.
So remade that one and put it out. So
that was a fairly good remake too. I thought. It worked. It definitely worked.
Yeah, she really got him. It was great.
Well, the thing today is, though, there's always the stretch that if the woman is the one who's victimized, then she can do that.
Yeah,
but I think today there's still, the reverse sexism of, well, if a man gets beat up, he's a man, so he has to take it. He really isn't allowed to do the revenge. That's kind of not allowed so much these days. Unless it's a superhero film.
Yeah, then it's all right.
Right, yeah. Now, I actually joked about it earlier, but there was that kind of familiar. I don't know if you guys saw it, but the movie John Wick. I mean, the great thing about it is it's pretty much some guys killed his dog, so he just kills everybody, and it's a pretty good actually. For what it is, it's an action shoot 'em up, kill everybody kind of action movie. So but it's a vengeance kind of flick, but.
Yeah.
Now, is that with Keanu Reeves?
Yes.
It is with Keanu Reeves, but he doesn't have to say much, so it works.
He actually did a great job. I really liked that movie. It was good.
Yeah, that would be a good thing. I actually kind of liked him in the remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still, because he always sort of strikes me as being slightly non-human. So that worked for that.
Yeah, that was good. You didn't like him in
So
Bill
now,
and Ted's Excellent Adventure?
Oh yeah, well that's of course the pinnacle of his career.
Yeah, definitely.
Now? Are there any other films that really stand out to you that kind of maybe are not what people would expect, but actually are really good examples of matching up to our philosophy?
Well, I always find, for me, I'm a big Godzilla fan. And as anybody who knows me and reads my blog finds out, that's something that I've been following for years. And if you go back to the original 1954 film,
Gojira.
Gojira.
Gotcha.
And it's really meant to be a warning to people. It's pointing out that when humanity goes too far, nature will balance itself again, and it may do so in a way that will not be so pleasant. So the monster there was an avatar of the nuclear horror fused with nature's vengeance. Yeah. And that's a very powerful image. The original Japanese cut of that film is very dark, and it's kind of plodding, but it's really meant to be terrifying and thoughtful. There are people dying. There are children who are irradiated that are dying. There's no compromising there on the idea of what consequences have been wrought. And for anybody who's interested in giant monster movies, it's definitely worth their while to see the original one.
Yeah.
But what's funny too with that is that Godzilla, of course, changed over time, and in order to market it, they decided to make him kid-friendly and make him into a hero. Yeah. And so we get very silly, kind of almost wrestling-like movies with Godzilla fighting, silly monsters like Gigan and Megalon and stuff like that.
I was going to ask you about that. That was one of my questions I had prepared. So thanks for blowing that for me. But no. But like, what movie or what film actually was the turning point for going from monster menace to hero?
Well, you know what? It started in the third film, Godzilla vs. King Kong, which was totally put together as a commercial thing, because King Kong was an inspiration for the original Godzilla film. It had been re-released not that long before the film was made, and it made a fortune. So the producers in Japan, Tomoyuki Tanaka, saw that and said, well, maybe we need to do some kind of giant monster movie. And then The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms came out in the U.S. that Ray Harryhausen did for his first solo film. And he was like, well, damn, what are we going to do? We got to do something. He had been apparently working on some other kind of movie that the deal fell through. So he was, okay, we got to do a giant monster movie. And I think the first title of it was like The Giant Monster from 20,000 Fathoms or something. It was very close to the American.
The Beast or something, right?
Yeah. The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. So it was very funny. They immediately were like, okay, we got to sort of rip this off. But ultimately they got a script that went way beyond that and used the nuclear theme because of course nobody had been bombed by nuclear bombs except Japan. And so the terror of that was still fresh in everybody's minds. And also there had been an incident where the atomic testing in the Pacific had polluted a Japanese fishing boat that had gone where it wasn't supposed to go, the Lucky Dragon number 5. And people got radiation poison on that. The stuff, it was like snow drifting down on them, the ashes from a hydrogen bomb test. And the fish that were brought in were put out on the market. They had to withdraw them because people were eating them and getting radiation poison. It's something that most Americans don't know about. So the immediacy and the horror of the nuclear issue was so close to everybody there. So it was very brave of them to take that on and recreate scenes that were like World War II, because Japan's film industry wasn't even really allowed to address those issues in any kind of realistic movie. So this was a way of getting around the censorship. The United States really controlled Japan's culture post-war. Yeah. And doing this monster movie, they got to express a lot without having the United States say, well, you can't do that. Because they said, well, it's a monster movie. You guys have monster movies. And then you watch the movie and go, oh, dear, they're saying a lot more here than we actually would want them to be saying. So it was very much an accusation and one that should have been leveled. It was an important message to be there. But yeah, so Godzilla versus King Kong was definitely one of the first steps of it being comedic. They kind of then backtracked a little. They had Godzilla versus Mothra, which was more serious. Godzilla's a real bad guy. And of course, Mothra is always the weirdest one monster they have, this giant, fluffy-looking moth with two little sexy Japanese girls singing at it all the time. Yeah. Like, that's so Japanese. It's really peculiar, but it's really charming. So it made for a very intriguing entry into their series. But fairly much after that, it really started to get silly. They did Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, and that has the monsters talking to each other, and then it got even sillier. So it just, throughout the end of that the Showa series, by 1975, it had really become, for the most part, fairly child-friendly and meant for comedy. But then there was a really interesting one in basically 1971. Yoshimitsu Banno he directed this film called Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster. In English, in Japanese, it was Gojira Tai Edora. And Hedorah movie, the name comes from sludge. And this was a monster that was living pollution that flew in the skies and put out sulfuric acid gas that dissolved people. And this film has, even though there's a little child character, little Ken, his father gets damaged by the monster, but there's death everywhere in this film. It's one of the first times that they had graphics of people dying since the original movie. And the whole theme of ecology, and that the Earth was really being damaged by people again, beyond the nuclear pollution that had happened earlier. Now, just regular pollution of all different kinds of things was totally damaging the planet, and that we really need to be aware of that. And again, Godzilla comes back as part of nature to fight this unnatural thing that has arisen from man's misdeeds. And Godzilla at that point works with mankind. They create a kind of device to dissolve this thing, but it doesn't really work, and Godzilla has to work with them. So it was kind of an interesting throwback, even though it's sort of psychedelic and has a fun kind of pop score. It still has a very dark undertone to it. And if you see the original Japanese one, there's a lot of gruesome deaths. People are literally dissolved, like they rot, and when the acid goes on them, and you see these like muddy skeletons all over the place. And it's kind of surprising. You'd think that, again, they're all kind of childy friendly, and you could scare some kids with that stuff.
Huh. Now, going back to the original again, you'd mentioned how the Japanese cut was very dark in the message and everything. Obviously, they shot scenes with what's his name, Perry Mason.
Oh, Raymond Burr, yeah.
Yeah, when they shot the scenes for him, and then of course there's overdubbing. Did they change the story much when they overdubbed American vocals to it?
They didn't really change it. They shortened the movie a bit, and they kind of took away the blame for America on it. It moved it away from that, because they didn't want to show that to people and everybody going, oh, well, we're the ones who did this? Well, I'm not going to go see that movie. Yeah. So it just made it more like the monster movies that were coming out in America. But I think they did a really good job of it. When you look at how they matched people and have Bird talking to them, and he plays it very seriously. He does a good job of playing the reporter, and it's pretty heartbreaking when all of this stuff comes down and the city is dead and in flames, and he's recounting this to people. His gravitas in there is actually pretty good. It's not cheesy. I think they did the best they could with it, and even though they took out the harder-hitting aspects of the original, they kind of kept the story there. And the best special effects are in it too, so that you didn't lose the best images of Godzilla.
I remember seeing it long ago. I was much younger when I saw the original and the subtitled version, and I was always wondering in the beginning when they had the footage of the boats out in the water, the military guys and everything, and they're trying to bomb and destroy Godzilla. do you think that was for the movie, or like, if filmed for the movie, or that was possibly actual military footage that they used?
Oh, you're talking about the depth charge attacks on them. That was military footage that they used.
Okay, that's what I figured.
They didn't have the budget. Yeah, they don't. They certainly didn't have the budget to like hire the military and go out.
Right.
Okay.
So, and American movies from that time period do that all the time too. If you watch lots of science fiction movies, suddenly it's like, and cue the army, and suddenly it's like all these pictures of the soldiers coming by and the planes and all of that, and it's all very scratchy looking, and you see that, and it's like, yeah, somebody got that from the stock footage department and cut it in there. I mean, nowadays they can afford to do it all for real. I mean, when they shot the new Godzilla movie with Gareth Edwards, they actually worked with the Navy to shoot things on aircraft carriers and such. They got the permission, they did it. So, but they spent like over $200 million making that movie.
Yeah. And did you enjoy it, the new one?
Oh, yeah, I like the new one a lot. I think that Edwards is a really wonderful director, and I think that's why he's gone from doing an independent film to doing Godzilla and now to doing a Star Wars movie, like a really meteoric career for that guy. But he's kind of a Spielberg-type director. He's got a real good visual talent. And I think the film was respectful to Godzilla for his whole range of films, because he went from being a villain to being a hero. And the Godzilla in Edwards film, they presented the material in advance. The trailers kind of made it look very dark and like he was going to be the bad guy. And then you end up finding out that Godzilla is the force of nature. He's nature's way of righting its balance. He's the alpha predator. He's the ancient alpha predator. He's always been Earth's avenger, essentially. And that when mankind releases the Mutos, the balance is upset, and it's Godzilla's job to crush them and put the Earth back to rights. Now, of course, the implied threat there is that if he sees humans as a threat, then all bets are off. Like at this point, we're like ants. He doesn't pay attention. The cities, the military blows it off. It's nothing. Like we haven't done enough to cause trouble, at least in this phase of their filmmaking. But they have a bunch of more of these movies planned. They have a sequel that's going to be Godzilla with apparently Rodan and Mothra and perhaps King Ghidorah, but they may save him for another one. And then they're going to do, since they're doing right now Kong of Skull Island with a much bigger King Kong than he's ever been in any previous movies. They definitely have plans on having Godzilla fight King Kong and maybe link up with King Kong. Like it may very well be that the final movie where they bring Ghidorah in is that Kong and Godzilla will fight Ghidorah.
How cool!
Wow,
it'll be fun. I'm sure these will be a blast. Thomas Tull, who's the head of Legendary, he's a complete fan. He loves these kind of things. They they spare no expense for these movies, and it's the first time in history we've ever gotten that. But on another tangent, the Japanese are right now working on the special effects for their new Godzilla movie. In English, it's called Godzilla Resurgence, and their idea was that. Since we got a heroic, noble Godzilla in the American movie, because they designed him to look kind of like a bear and have aspects of eagle in his face, so he looks like a noble living animal. They want to do scary as all get out Godzilla now, that he looks like completely scarred and monstrous. So far they've only released the picture of his face, but he looks pretty creepy. He's got these sort of weird little eyes like the original one, and he's this mouthful of teeth that stretches way past. They're just like sticking out in all different directions, almost like they're erupting from his face. And the skin looks all very rough and almost scarred. So they promised to make him the Nightmare Godzilla, and I think we're going to get a pretty good scary Godzilla from Toho this time around.
That's interesting. I loved it. I love the new versions. Actually, this weekend on El Rey, this past weekend, I think they had a marathon. I watched quite a few of the old Godzillas actually. So, and I always loved that. Growing up, and King Kong too. So I'm excited. I heard about the news about them bringing them together. So I'm excited to see what kind of direction they take with it.
It makes sense with Godzilla teaming up with King Kong. Because he's always, although he was always portrayed as not liking humans and being, monstrous and stuff, he's always fought alongside humanity, against common threats. You know what I mean? Like the latest film.
Oh yeah, well, the Kong film that Peter Jackson did, I thought was really wonderful. Folks, there's a lot of divided opinion on that one, but Peter Jackson so loves the original King Kong, that he really felt that he was going to give you a Kong that you could relate to. And by finding Ann Darrow actually having a relationship with Kong, like becoming his friend and companion, he defends her. She's not just a token or a prize, but she becomes like a being that he interacts with. And I thought that when Kong finally dies, you know, you can see the lifeguard of his eyes before he slips off the Empire State Building. Yeah. That really hits you so much harder than the original, because you really feel the relationship that this animal's been so mistreated by people, and yet he's still protecting this woman, and these folks just shoot him to pieces, and he dies, and it's totally heartrending. It was just amazing.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. All right. Well,
I've been keeping count of the movies that we've been talking about, and even the ones that are about to come out. I think it comes up to 13. I lost. Maybe, who knows?
Hey.
You're like, hey.
John, how about? Do you have any particular monster movies that you cherish while we're on the subject before we want to close it up?
Sure. Put me on the spot.
Or horror movies, or you know, some of these satanic themes, things that stand out in your mind,
or superhero movies, or whatever.
I mean, there's always. I mean, it's almost cliche at this point. The Batman, I mean, taking the the vengeance thing and into your own hands and giving people their just rewards. I mean, there's that, of course.
Yeah.
Have you been watching the Gotham series?
Oh yeah, I'm all caught up. I love it.
Yeah, I haven't seen the second season yet, but I've been pretty impressed.
You're gonna like it.
Yeah, it's very solid. Really good exploration of all the various themes that Batman has woven into it. Batman's always been one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, they probably don't have the largest amount of money or anything, but it's still it's pretty good, and it's kept my interest for the whole all the way up till now. So I can't wait for the new season to come out.
Excellent.
Catch up on that, definitely. It's really cool.
So what do you think about the Affleck Batman?
I don't. But
I'm not really worried about it. I mean, at least from what I've seen as a trailer, I think he's going to try to handle it maturely. I don't think he. I don't know. I think that there was so much hype against him, and when you look at some of the other characters that we've had that people have had a fit about that turned out great, then you just gotta go, well, give him a shot, at least see how it turns out. And what I saw from the new trailer, it sounds like the way it looked like the way he was handling Bruce Wayne was done pretty well, and that's really all he's got to do. Once he puts the mask on, then he's just got to fight. And in fact, a smart Batman doesn't say too much anyway.
Right. I'm Batman. It's about all you need.
Right.
Dr. Fishy, no! Anyway, yeah, it's crazy.
Well, and Michael Keaton, of course, everybody was freaked out when he was cast.
Exactly. Yeah.
And he knocked it. Yeah, he was fantastic.
He's
really
one of
great
people's
Batman.
favorites.
Now, have you guys seen Birdman that he's in?
No,
I have not. I've heard a lot about
I've seen Ant-Man, but not.
Oh yeah, no. Birdman is really an art film, and the idea is it's about an actor who played a superhero like Batman, and he's reaching the end of his career, and he's trying to do a play and revive his career. But the movie's rather surreal, and the whole thing is shot to look like it's all done in one take. Like the camera never stops. You just follow everybody through their lives. And it's brilliant. If you like superhero movies and you have the patience for more of an art kind of approach to it, it's totally worth your while. I think it's a brilliant movie, and it's in-depth approach to somebody's emotions and how they're perceiving themselves, and dealing with the idea of a superhero persona and their real lives. Fantastic film, really worth your time.
Now we do have to ask you then. I know that you know quite a bit about the saga yourself. Did you see Star Wars, the new Star Wars?
No, I have not seen it yet. So,
excellent.
All right, I'm not going to ask any more then.
Yeah, no, I the Star Wars stuff. Again, I'm since I'm older than you guys. Star Trek is really the thing that I've always been into, and that's.
Well, I love Star Trek too. Actually,
yeah, me too. Yeah.
So Star Wars doesn't have that kind of childhood thing where it grabbed me and had toys and all that stuff, because it came out when I was 18 or 17, I forget. But it was sort of okay. I'm in young adulthood, and it was a different kind of impact on me. But of course, Darth Vader was an amazing concept, and Darth Vader is a great figure to use because people look at you and they say, oh, you guys worship Satan, or you think of that. And you have to point out that, well, you have Darth Vader out there, and he's about as real as Satan is. And that you could say, Hail Darth Vader, if you wanted to. And that would be it would have the same weight. In fact, it may have more weight, because people are much more concerned with Darth Vader than they are with Satan, I think, in our culture.
Very true.
Yeah.
It's really, when you deal with people who are believers, and if they think that something comes from a past mythology, it has more weight, I think, or that it might have some reality because it's from the past. I say nonsense. That we create our mythologies and our images, and Star Wars is certainly a contemporary mythology. And I had mentioned it on the True Monsters show that they talked to me about for 2 hours. I filmed all this material for those people. But when we talked about the Star Wars mythology, that Anakin is, of course, he was a messiah. He was the one who was supposed to embody the Force more fully than anybody else. He was going to be the savior for them, and he ended up turning into the devil. He fell. He was the bright, shining Lucifer who became Satan. Yeah. And I think that's powerful, and that if we remind people of that concept, they might actually look at the old biblical stories and go, oh, okay, I see how this is made up, but this can have significance that might have emotional impact, and it might help them move past the actual belief in those silly religions, because they find that the emotions are wrapped up in something that's a fiction. And everybody who's wrapped up with emotions in religion is wrapped up in a fiction, but I think if they see that example, that can help them wake up a bit.
And, since you brought it up, and John, I won't go on too much of a Star Wars rant here, but since you kind of brought something up there, just the same thing that you could say with Satanism is sometimes it really comes down to, for an outsider, if they just learn to look at things the right way. When it came to the story of Anakin, like you said, he kind of fell from graces, but they all said that he was supposed to be the one that brought balance, but at the time in the story, there was thousands and thousands of Jedis, and they had schools, and there was no Sith that they knew of. So really, he did bring balance. He did exactly. He balanced the scales by getting rid of most of the good guys and bringing up 2 bad guys. So I don't know, if you looked at it a certain way, then he actually did exactly what the prophecy said.
Well, what's always weird about that Lucas mythology is that the Sith, there's only supposed to be 2 at a time. And I don't know if that's a matter of convenience or the idea that the Sith are that much more powerful than the Jedi, that it only takes 2 of them to balance out the dark side against the light. It's kind of, well, which did you really mean, George, on this? Yeah. Because it's a really odd concept. You would think that there'd be a whole school, in Sith academies and all of that.
Well, there was in the books, and actually they ended up constantly warring with each other, and it's always a struggle for power. So the idea in the books came about that there should be one who's the master and one who's always trying to kill the master and become the master, basically. So that's really what the whole point. So that we weren't warring with each other, but we're growing in the dark side. So I'm going off. I know. Sorry.
It's all right.
I watched, to prepare for the new movie, the whole Clone Wars series of cartoons. I was really impressed with that, because there's so many influences of other movies and culture in there. You find that they go to Kubrick's film that starred Kirk Douglas, Paths of Glory, and they kind of lift aspects of that, even shots from that Kubrick movie for a story arc that they're doing. It's that sophisticated. And they had a Godzilla tribute. It's actually a Godzilla and King Kong tribute in the 2-episode The Zillo Beast thing. So they did a nice job with that. But the whole interesting thing of, when you watch the prequels, which of course they are lesser naturally, everybody agrees, than the original trilogy, but aside from Jar Jar, who was in the first movie, you could actually almost dismiss the first film. But when you watch the Clone Wars, then between watching the second movie and the third one, that third movie now has so much more weight to it, because you've now watched relationships actually happen with Obi-Wan and Anakin. Like they're characters. They have a history. And Obi-Wan is so much more interesting, that he's loved and lost, that he's had to do all this kind of wonderful espionage, and his character is just so, again, it just really fleshed out wonderfully. And Anakin too has so much more personality if you watch those, that when you see those what goes on in that third movie. At the time, you kind of feel it's sort of too short and it's not earned. It just happens too quickly and it just doesn't have that much weight. It now has the weight. If
Makes sense more,
yeah. Yeah, so I really felt like to appreciate that third of the prequels, you really need to watch that long series of the Clone Wars. But the animation is stunning in that. Really wonderful music. And great stuff. It's really worthwhile.
Even some of the themes in that were even darker than any of the Star Wars movies. Just like you said, Obi-Wan losing the girl that he loved was basically murdered in front of him. And for a cartoon that was on the Cartoon Network, it was pretty dark what they did with that.
Yeah, well, when the slavers conquered that artistic planet of people and they sort of put everybody on a platform in order to get Obi-Wan to obey, they just throw a whole bunch of them into a pit and say, we're just going to keep doing that until you do what we want you to do. So there's like wholesale death going on, and it's like, wow, that's not really a children's approach.
No, exactly.
Awesome.
No, it was impressive. I would totally recommend that for any fan of the whole Star Wars mythology. And it is something that impacts our culture. It's people know about it. Years ago I went to a show about the Afro-Caribbean syncretistic religions at the Museum of Natural History, and they had these altars that were from Balo Mayombe practitioners. And amongst all of the weird avatars that they put on their altars, Darth Vader was prominently placed. So that if you could see that's where it's gone, that kind of a symbol from a film that's seeped out into everybody knows who Darth Vader is. You see that helmet, and everybody's like, yeah, it's Darth Vader. It's known universally through our culture. So you've got to give the power to films and to Lucas using archetypal imagery in that to create this Satan figure that's had global impact. It's an impressive artistic achievement in that sense.
Absolutely
awesome. So you mentioned that you liked Star Trek. I had a question, and it's about like the difference between the old Star Treks and then the new movies of Star Trek. Do you like any one of them better, or like me, do you take them for what they're worth, each one?
Yeah, I take them all for what they're worth. I mean, all the different Star Trek series have their own value. They just have different approaches.
Yeah.
The original series is fantastic. I grew up with that. I actually, when the very first episode was broadcast, we didn't have a color TV at my house, but my sister's soon-to-be husband, their family had one. So I demanded to go there so I could see the very first episode of Star Trek in color. And I was taken with that so much. After the first one, I never missed anything of that. And the original series is fantastic. And then when they did the Next Generation, Picard is such a fantastic, intelligent commander. He's so different from Kirk. And then all the other characters are really pretty fantastic. Data is an amazing Pinocchio character that just has so much humanity and deals with what it means to be a human, as Spock did too. I mean, Spock was extraordinary. Leonard Nimoy was brilliant. And then the subsequent ones had fun. I mean, Janeway was pretty cool. She did her thing. And then you got the whole Borg thing really being explored with Seven of Nine, and that was pretty awesome. And recently I went back and rewatched the Voyager series. I watched most of the Voyager one. That was the Janeway one. I was thinking, excuse me, I really meant to say the Enterprise series.
Oh, yeah.
With Scott Bakula, and that is much better on a second viewing than it was when it was originally broadcast. They just have a lot of fun with it. There's a lot of pulp aspects to it, and there's a whole sense of seat of your pants aspect to it, of trying to figure things out. The Vulcans, of course, are much weirder in that. They're much more repressed, and the development of things was very interesting in that series. It's I totally felt a little let down by it the first time I watched it, but on hindsight, it really plays much better than I thought originally. So the new movies, the two ones that J.J. Abrams has done, I really liked the first one. I thought it was a great reboot. I thought the casting was fantastic, particularly Carl Urban playing McCoy. He's
great.
He is stunning. Because that was my fear. I thought, all right, you could do Spock, you could do Kirk, but McCoy, who the hell's going to do that? And Carl Urban nails it.
He does.
So awesomely McCoy that just was like, oh, that's enough. Like, you've already won me over. Like, this is fantastic.
Yeah, that was awesome.
But the energy to the first one was really great, and a nifty way of rebooting it. And the Into Darkness one, I think, was trying too hard to play off of The Wrath of Khan, which, I mean, The Wrath of Khan is one of the best B movies ever made, ever.
Yes, absolutely.
And I don't think they should have gone with that. I think they should have just said, leave Khan alone. I think Cumberbatch does a great job trying to be a different kind of Khan, a more intense, more intelligent, less carnal Khan, really. He's the intellectual Khan.
Yeah.
It just doesn't have what the original Wrath of Khan did, and I don't think it replaced it enough. Like flipping who dies and blah blah. It's just
right. Yeah.
Oh, it's so easy. He comes back. We just use Khan's blood. Okay, that's like too. It's not earned. That's too easy. So the new one that Simon Pegg has helped script is going to be, I think, more of a semi-comic one, which I think could make it fun, because Star Trek often had comedic episodes. And we kind of need that. I think a good some laughs, playing with the characters, kind of getting into them some more rather than having them be so stylized and distant. Those people live in those characters now. They've been through 2 films. They've done a good job reviving the characters. So let's have some fun with them. So
right.
I'm looking forward to this new one.
Yeah, me too.
Me too.
I did notice something earlier when we were talking about Batman versus Superman, but we kind of went off, and I didn't want to interrupt before, but maybe I can mention it now. Have you guys seen I Am Legend with Will Smith?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so you knew in the movie back then they kind of alluded to, on the billboard, Batman versus Superman. And I noticed that movie, I Am Legend, came out in 2007, and this Batman versus Superman is coming out in 2016. And as we know, 7 plus 6 is 13. And another thing I noticed really quick is that the Batman versus Superman is called Dawn of Justice. Now, if you count the letters in Dawn of Justice, they add up to 13. That's getting old.
Yeah.
You're a dork.
I think nobody needs to watch that Will Smith I Am Legend. I think that was a pretty awful film.
Oh, yeah. I like the original.
Well, yeah, if you watch the one with Vincent Price, then that's really fantastic. And then the Charlton Heston remake of the novel, too, was really fun as well. Yeah, but the Will Smith one was just a bore. It really didn't add anything at all. And the ending was awful and really stupid.
Yeah. So. I heard Arnold Schwarzenegger was supposed to play that originally.
Is there 13 letters in his name?
In fact, there is. No, who knows?
Well, when they were going to do that first reboot of Planet of the Apes that Tim Burton finally directed, which also was just terrible, Arnold was originally considered for the script for that. He was going to play the Mark Wahlberg role, and it was going to be this crazy action-adventure kind of Planet of the Apes, and then they fortunately didn't go that direction, because that would have just been dopey. But then they went even dopier, so I don't know if that might have been. I can always watch Arnold. He is wonderful. I've just been rewatching the Terminator films with him in them, and he's just fantastic. I always enjoy Arnold.
What about, okay, now I'm a huge Conan fan, and there are rumors that he is going to reprise that role for King Conan.
Yeah, I've heard that, and I'm looking forward to it. The sad thing is that John Milius, of course, had a stroke, and he'd be the logical guy to be doing it, and he's been fighting his way back from that. And but the people involved with the script for the King Conan film are real fans. They're fans of the original Robert E. Howard stories, and they're big fans of the Milius film, the first one particularly, which is, again, a classic, amazing score. Everything in that movie is just wonderfully satanic and brilliant. But I like King Conan with old Arnold playing old Conan. Like, that could be fantastic. That the one with the remake that they had done with Jason Momoa was really pretty to look at, but kind of placid. Didn't really work.
Yeah. It's not the same. I think too when you kind of get used to a character. I know, like, I'm sure people would say, Arnold, the reason why he played that well is because he didn't have to say anything. But I don't know. There was something about the simplicity, even everything from his facial expressions and just the way that he seemed to ponder everything before he acted. I thought he was really brilliant in the original Conan the Barbarian. And,
he's funny. He's funny.
And I think that there was something lost in that. Like, I don't mind the Jason Momoa one, but yeah, it's not the same. It's just not the same character. And it's almost one of those things where they try to put too much in there, too much CGI and make things bigger than they had to be.
Everything is green screen now. It's done in post, compositing and stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, John Milius stuck a Nietzsche quote at the beginning of the first Conan film. So you knew where that was going.
Yeah.
And then that was very important. There's a philosophy behind that first film. The second one was just kind of a silly, it was like one of those Sons of Hercules movies or something.
Right, yeah. It was a little goofy.
Really, yeah, that's that level of stuff.
Especially with the sidekick and everything in there.
Oh yeah. It was just like, okay, it's too comedic. I mean, the first one has comedy and it's got funny stuff, but it's also serious and there's passion and fear and triumph.
And so much built up in the score that really conveys the emotions that are happening, where they didn't have to speak so much because the music just carried you, and you hear that music later, and it brings those scenes to mind, so bombastic,
Yeah, it's my favorite Basil Polidorus score. It's beautiful music, wonderful. He refers to classic pieces, he takes ideas from them and weaves them into something completely original and totally successful.
Yeah, excellent.
And he's passed away too. So the new Conan film, it's going to be a hard thing finding somebody to do the right kind of music for that.
Right. So speaking of this amazing classical score, now we happen to know that you have some great music of your own, and can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing with that?
Well, I've been working with Gene Laverne, who is the host of Vox Satanae and Radio Free Satan.
Yes.
It's their classical music show, and it's, as far as I know, it's, I think, their most listened to program. He does an extraordinary job, and he even let me guest curate one of the episodes, and I think I'll be doing an upcoming one, probably on film scores. But he's a real wizard with audio, and he's been restoring cassettes I have of music that I wrote during my university days. And at that time, I was really trying a lot of different styles. I've been putting the stuff up bit by bit on my music download page on the Church of Satan website for free. People can just download them and enjoy the stuff. I have a piece that's coming up. We've just finalized it. It's called Shango, and it's sort of my take on a Baroque ritornello form like Bach used in his Brandenburg concertos so brilliantly. But I kind of applied almost a weird Latin slant to it, and the instrumentation is very unusual, with an organ being used monophonically like a giant woodwind instrument, and there's pan flute and percussion and strings and brass. It's really fun. It's a very energetic piece, and I think we've got a really good remastering. I had done that on a Fairlight synthesizer. I had a brief access to it in school. And I wanted to sort of do something that was inspired by Bach, and it came out kind of intriguing, I think. I had only played it for people in class. I've never released it anywhere, so it'll be brand new for people to hear. And there'll be more to come. But I had done my classical Allegro piece, which was a piece I wrote that was based on the style of Mozart and Haydn, and then I orchestrated it with the synthesizers to sound like something that Wendy Carlos would have done in her early career. So it's a tribute to both Mozart, Haydn, and Wendy Carlos, and that's already up there if people want to listen to that. And there's my bombastically weird Walpurgisnacht, which is done with the kind of plug-in synthesizers that they use to do the score of Forbidden Planet, where you really have to create all of your sounds from scratch. There's no keyboard. I built circuits and created sounds that evolved, and then I recorded them and I layered them, and then I also did a sort of spoken sung bit that I just did off the top of my head, and I put that in there straightforward, and I also run it backwards to make it backward masked, because everybody's afraid of backward masking. But it's a piece that when I played it for my music composition class, it was a class where we'd meet at night, and we were up on, I think, the 8th or 9th floor. Sorry, not the 13th floor. But I turned out all the lights and then said, okay, here you go, listen to this piece. And then it played, and then I turned the lights back on after it, and one of the students said, okay, now I'm ready to jump out the window.
Should have recorded that. By the way, Forbidden Planet, excellent movie. Got to throw that in there. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, Forbidden Planet's one of my favorites. I had the best experience of seeing that. It's a movie that was originally released in what they called Spectra Sound, which is a 3-channel soundtrack. And the theater in New Jersey, the Lowe's over there, they had the only remaining Spectra Sound projector existing. And they had discovered it in a projection room that was open to the pigeons and the weather. They got the guy who was the brother of the man who created the system to come in and restore it. They went back to the original negatives, struck a fresh print that was exactly like the original release print when the film came out, and they played that there. And that was phenomenal. That movie looked gorgeous. It was perfect. And hearing it in that 3-channel sound in this huge theater was totally extraordinary.
Very cool. Wow.
And that's a very satanic film. When I wrote my application to the Church of Satan originally, that was one of the films that I discussed. Because essentially, the point in Forbidden Planet is that the Krell fell because they had a separation between their deeper selves and their conscious intellect. Like, they are unlike Satanists who are integrated. We are completely carnal. There is no separation between our emotions and our minds. The Krells had that. The Krell race had that split, and when their subconscious, they called it the id, had access to all of their long repressed passions and emotions, it destroyed them all overnight. Now, if it was Satanists who had that Krell machine, we wouldn't have any problem. We'd just become even more the gods that we are.
Excellent. Very cool. This was a really awesome conversation. So
Thanks. It's been loads of fun, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before you go, we have to ask you, because we asked this of all our guests, what does Satan mean to you?
Okay. Satan is me. As an atheist, I'm my own god, so Satan is an externalized symbol of myself, my potential, my achievements, my intelligence, my carnality, my passions, and my pride. Satan is my sovereign self as center of my subjective universe. When in ritual, I call out, "Hail Satan," and salute myself, looking into the eyes of the goat in the sigil of Baphomet, which serves as a mirror reflection of my unique consciousness, vitally thriving in this indifferent universe. So can I get a "Hail Satan" from you guys?
Hail Satan!
Hail Satan!
I gotta say, this is our 13th episode, and that was the best answer we've ever gotten.
Thank you.
Excellent.
wow. I don't know what to say. This has been just such a great episode.
And an honor, an honor to have you.
And
It's an honor for me, for you guys to want to spend time with me and listen to me jabber.
No, it's so cool. Like, and especially because of the way that you talk about some of these films makes me want to go. All right, I gotta watch this. I gotta see this.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That's
so
good.
it's exciting. It's a great way for us to get a good review, and especially I think for when it comes to classic films, and there's such a wide spectrum of things. I think it's good for us to hear from somebody. Like, here's the things you need to look for that makes this great, and that it makes it better. That's all I can say.
And for me, like a lot of times is, I'll watch a movie and I won't think of the musical score. I'll just go along for the emotional ride that it takes you on. But now I'll be, thinking about everything you've talked about during these movies. I'll be a little more focused on how that musical score is done and what it's doing. Yep.
Excellent. That's one of the things I'm looking forward to in the new Star Wars film. More John Williams music is something that's always worth waiting for.
And I look forward to talking to you after you've seen it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything about it now. So
Yeah. What's fun is that I find that there's aspects of our philosophy that's been permeating the culture, whether it's identified as such or not.
Right.
And it's great to see these threads crop up in films that promote the outsider and the unusual and the one who isn't part of all of the norm and the herd. That we can look towards that. It's always been fun that Hollywood has had an undercurrent of that through film noir and earlier, and through so many movies you find filmmakers who stand for that independent spirit, that individualist pride aspect that the collectivist parts of our culture would like to smash and wash away. Again, the Conan film, Milius is so consciously that he's telling you, he doesn't hide it. But other filmmakers are more subtle in it. Even if you see something like Maleficent, which did really well, and that film is utterly diabolical. That you watch this beautiful creature, Maleficent, who must have been the child of two beautiful absolute devils, Her parents must have been, like Satan and Mrs. Satan, and they had to have. And she makes mistakes, and she regrets them, and she tries to correct them, as a Satanist would. You know that you're not perfect. You're self-critical. And then you also have to learn to mistrust the norms, because they are never to be trusted. Right. So there's so many. I would totally have a satanic child go see that movie, show it to them at home, because there's so many moralities in it that totally support our perspective. And that was in a Disney film. It was fantastic.
All right. So just wanted to say again, thank you so much for being here. It really is an honor to have you here, and we've been talking about it for a while. We've been really excited about it, and just glad to have you here, and we definitely want to have you come back.
Thanks so much, guys. It's really been fun talking about things that I enjoy talking about, and that you guys find interest in too.
Oh, yeah.
It's been fun.
All right.
All right. Until next time, hail Satan.
Hail Satan.
Hail Satan.